Imagine standing on the African savanna 3.9 million years ago. No villages, no fire, no language as we know it. You're barely 4 feet tall. Your brain is a third the size of a modern human's, and everything with teeth wants you dead. You're not the hunter. You're the hunted. Your species, Australopithecus afarensis, survives by hiding in trees, eating whatever the real predators leave behind, and running. Always running. This is the story of Kato, a young male living in what would one day be called the Great Rift Valley of East Africa. He'd watched his father die trying to steal a kill from hyenas. He'd seen his sister taken by a leopard in the night. His clan of 12 was starving, driven from their territory by a dominant group, forced into barren lands where even scavenging was nearly impossible. But hunger does something to the mind. It makes you desperate. It makes you think the unthinkable. And on one scorching day, when death seemed certain, Kato did something no member of his species had ever done before, something that would change the trajectory of evolution itself. Subscribe now and stay until the end, because this is the moment we stopped being prey and started becoming human. Kato's hands bled as he dug into the dry earth, searching for roots that weren't there. The sun hung like a merciless eye in the cloudless sky, baking the savanna, until even the insects had gone silent. 3 days without food, 4 days since they'd found water. His clan was dying and everyone knew it. They called themselves nothing. Language as we understand it didn't exist yet. But they had sounds, gestures, a complex system of grunts and hand signals that conveyed fear, hunger, danger, family. Kato was 19 years old. Though he had no concept of counting years, he only knew seasons, the wet times and the dry times, and this dry season was the worst anyone could remember. His clan had been driven here by the River Group, a larger and more aggressive band of Australopithecus that had claimed the good territory near the permanent waterhole. Kato's people had fought. His father, Bren, had stood his ground, screaming and throwing rocks. But 12 against 23 was suicide. They'd retreated to this wasteland, a stretch of cracked earth and dying acacias, where even the scavenger birds circled without landing. There was nothing here. Nothing lived. Nothing died. It was a void. Kato looked at his clan, his mother Nala, her ribs visible through thin skin, sitting in the shade of a thorn bush with eyes that had lost their spark. His younger brother Tok, only 8 seasons old, too weak now to even cry. The elders, 5 of them, had stopped moving entirely, simply waiting for the end with that resigned patience that comes when you've outlived your usefulness. They were Australopithecus afarensis, the species that would one day be called Lucy by scientists in white coats. They walked upright, used their hands to grasp and manipulate objects, and had brains just large enough to solve simple problems. But they were not human, not yet. They were prey animals with opposable thumbs, stuck between the safety of the trees their ancestors had left behind and the future that hadn't yet arrived. Kato had watched a cheetah take down a Thompson's gazelle that morning, watched it feed with an efficiency that made his stomach twist with jealousy. The meat, the blood, the life force that would keep that predator strong while his own kind starved. After the cheetah left, Kato had approached the kill site hoping for scraps, but the hyenas had already claimed it, 6 of them, laughing their terrible laugh. Snapping at him when he got too close, he'd thrown a rock. It had bounced harmlessly off the lead hyena's shoulder, and the creature had simply stared at him with what looked almost like pity. "You're not a threat," those eyes said. "You're barely worth chasing." That's when the idea first sparked in Kato's primitive brain, a thought so revolutionary, so dangerous, that it made his entire body tremble. The hyenas hunted in groups. The lions hunted in groups. The wild dogs, the wolves, even the crocodiles at the waterhole worked together to bring down prey larger than themselves, but Kato's people only gathered. They picked berries, dug for tubers, stole abandoned kills when they could. They never created the kill. They never hunted. What if they could? He looked at his starving clan, at the vast herds of antelope visible in the distance, hundreds of them. Thousands more meat than they could eat in a lifetime. Just standing there, grazing, living, while his people died of hunger mere miles away. That afternoon, as the sun began its descent, Kato saw something that made his heart stop. A young impala, separated from its herd, limping badly from what looked like an old injury, wandering directly toward their position. Alone, vulnerable. close enough to reach. Every instinct Cato had screamed at him to hide. Injured animals often meant predators nearby. But his hunger screamed louder. He stood slowly, his long arms hanging at his sides, and made a sound he'd never made before, a low, urgent grunt that brought every member of his clan to attention. Cato pointed at the limping impala, then at his clan members, then made a grasping motion with his hands. The concept was insane, impossible, but in their desperate eyes, he saw something flicker to life, understanding, and just beyond the impala, moving through the tall grass with deadly grace, Cato saw the real threat, a leopard stalking the same prey, its spotted coat rippling with muscle, its eyes fixed on the easy meal limping toward mutual convergence. The three-way collision was seconds away. Chapter 2. The impossible idea time fractured into heartbeats. The impala, perhaps 50 feet away, continued its painful limp toward a cluster of shrubs, near where Cato's clan huddled. The leopard, a massive male with scars across its face, slunk through grass that barely concealed its bulk, closing the distance with patience born of countless successful kills. And Cato stood frozen between terror and opportunity, his primitive brain trying to process an equation it had never been designed to solve. His mother Nala grabbed his arm, her fingers digging into his flesh, trying to pull him down into hiding. The universal signal, danger approaching, make yourself invisible. Every member of the clan was already crouching, preparing to scatter if the leopard noticed them. But Cato didn't crouch. Instead, he did something that would echo through 3.9 million years of evolution. He resisted instinct. He pulled away from his mother and moved toward his clan members, making urgent gestures, grunting in patterns that conveyed not just danger, but something else. Something without words, because words didn't exist yet. He pointed at the impala, then at the leopard, then at multiple clan members, then made throwing motions with his arms. The confusion on their faces was absolute. His uncle Grook, an elder with silver hair and missing teeth, shook his head violently, the gesture for no, for wrong, for death. But Cato's younger brother Tok, despite his weakness, tilted his head in that uniquely human gesture that means, I'm trying to understand. Cato grabbed a rock, a good one, the size of his fist, heavy and sharp. He showed it to Tok, then to his cousin Mira, a young female with clever hands who could crack nuts better than anyone. He made throwing motions again, but this time he pointed specifically at the leopard's head. The idea crystallized in that moment, transmitted not through language but through gesture, repetition and desperate hope. If they all threw together, if they could drive the leopard away from the impala even for seconds, even for moments, Mira understood first. Her eyes widened and she picked up her own rock. Then Tok. Then slowly, reluctantly, 4 others. 7 members of the clan now held stones, their hands trembling, their faces showing an emotion that had no name yet, but would one day be called courage. The impala was 30 feet away now, limping past their position, completely unaware it was caught between 2 types of predator. One ancient, one being born in this very moment. The leopard accelerated, preparing for its final rush, and Cato knew if he waited any longer, the moment would pass. The leopard would kill the impala in seconds, drag it into a tree, and his clan would return to dying slowly under the merciless sun. He screamed, a sound that was part fear, part fury, part something entirely new. And he threw his rock with every ounce of strength his small, starved body possessed. The stone flew true, striking the leopard's shoulder, just as it launched toward the impala. The impact wasn't enough to injure the big cat, but it was enough to startle it, to break its focus for a critical second. The leopard twisted mid-leap, landing off balance, its head swiveling toward this new, unexpected threat, and then the other stones came. 7 rocks thrown by 7 desperate hominids, most missing entirely, but 2 finding their mark, one glancing off the leopard's flank, another striking near its eye. The leopard roared, a sound that should have sent Cato's entire clan fleeing into the trees, screaming their submission to the apex predator. But something was different now. Instead of scattering, instead of running, the clan members held their ground, more rocks already in their hands, forming an unconscious line between the predator. The impala, given this miraculous reprieve, bolted, not away from everyone, but directly between Cato's clan members. passing so close that Cato could see the terror in its eye, could smell its sweat, could almost touch its flank. And Cato made a decision that would be carved into the genetic memory of every human to come. He didn't let it pass. Instead, he lunged forward, his long arms reaching, his hands grasping, and grabbed the impala's injured hind leg with both hands. The animal screamed and kicked, its hooves catching Cato in the chest, knocking the air from his lungs. But he held on. He held on because letting go meant returning to slow starvation, and that was a death he could no longer accept. "Help me." His grunt seemed to scream, though the words didn't exist yet. And for the first time in the history of their species, they did. Tok was the first to respond, throwing himself at the impala's other leg with a desperation that transcended rational thought. Then Mira, her clever hands finding purchase on the animal's haunches. Then Gruk, the elder who moments before had signaled death, now wrapping his arms around the impala's neck with the strength that remained in his wiry frame. The impala thrashed with the fury of a creature that knew its life was ending. Its hooves connected with Tok's face, splitting his lip, sending blood spraying. Its body twisted and bucked, trying to shake off these strange, hairless apes that had dared to touch it. Cato felt his grip slipping, felt the powerful muscles beneath the hide contracting, preparing for one massive effort to break free. But then his mother was there. Nala, who had lost her mate to scavengers, who had watched her daughter taken by a leopard, who had been dying slowly in the wasteland. She threw herself onto the impala's shoulders, using her body weight like an anchor. 2 more clan members joined, then 3 more, until the impala collapsed under the sheer mass of hominid bodies, all of them clinging, grasping, holding on with a ferocity born of starvation. And then came the problem none of them had anticipated. They had no idea what to do next. The impala was down, trapped but still very much alive, still thrashing, still dangerous. Kato's people had no claws, no fangs, no evolutionary weapons designed for killing. Their teeth were flat, made for grinding plants. Their nails were blunt and useless. They had brought down prey, but they couldn't finish it. The impala's eyes rolled in terror, its breathing coming in panicked gasps. And for a horrible moment, Cato felt something he couldn't name, something that would one day be called empathy. This creature was suffering, and he was causing it, and some primitive part of his brain recoiled from that reality. But hunger is a more ancient force than empathy. Gruk, the elder, made a guttural sound and pointed at the impala's throat. He mimed a squeezing motion, and Cato understood. Gruk had seen leopards kill. Every member of the clan had watched predators work their terrible magic. The throat was where life ended. Cato released the impala's leg and crawled forward, his hands reaching for the animal's neck. The impala's eyes met his, and in that gaze was an accusation, a question. "Why are you doing this?" "We were both prey together. We both ran from the same predators." Cato's hands closed around the throat and squeezed. It took longer than he expected. The impala fought, its body convulsing, its hooves striking blindly, connecting with Mira's ribs, with Tok's shoulder. But the clan held on, their combined weight and strength overwhelming the animal's desperate struggle. Minutes passed, long horrible minutes where the impala's movements gradually weakened, where its breathing became shallow gasps, where the light in its eyes slowly dimmed, and then it was still. Silence fell over the group. They released their grip slowly, backing away from the carcass as if unsure what they'd just done, uncertain if they should be proud or terrified. They had killed. Not scavenged, not stolen, not found, killed. Created death with their own hands. The leopard had watched the entire spectacle from 30 feet away, its tail twitching, its face showing what almost looked like calculation. This was new behavior, unpredictable behavior, dangerous behavior. Cato stood on shaking legs, his hands still trembling from the kill, and looked at the leopard. For a moment, predator and prey becoming predator simply stared at each other, and something shifted in the fabric of the natural world. A line had been crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. The leopard snarled once, a warning, a promise, and melted back into the grass. But Cato barely noticed. He was staring at the impala, at the meat, at enough food to keep his entire clan alive for days. Flies were already landing on the carcass. Vultures were beginning to circle overhead, and Cato realized with creeping horror that they had maybe minutes before every scavenger and predator within miles descended on this location. They had made a kill, but they had no claws to open it, no fangs to tear the hide. The meat was right there and they couldn't access it. His mother made a frustrated sound, her fingers scratching uselessly at the impala's tough hide. Tok tried biting it, his flat teeth sliding off without purchase. The clan was seconds away from losing everything they'd risked their lives to obtain. That's when Grook picked up the same rock Cato had thrown at the leopard. The elder examined it carefully, turning it in his weathered hands, and then, with movements that seemed almost guided by some external force, he brought the sharp edge down on the impala's hide. The skin split. Not much, just a small tear, but enough. Grook looked up at Cato, and in the elder's eyes was a revelation that transcended their primitive understanding. Tools weren't just for cracking nuts or digging roots. Tools could be weapons. Tools could be butchers. Tools could make them more than they were. Cato grabbed his own rock and joined Grook, both of them working the stone edges against the hide, tearing, cutting, creating an opening. Blood welled up, dark, rich, precious, and the smell of it made Cato's mouth water uncontrollably. They were so focused on their work that none of them noticed the new danger until it was almost too late. A sound carried on the afternoon wind, a low, rumbling vocalization that made every member of the clan freeze. Cato looked up and felt his heart stop. The River Group, 23 members strong, led by their massive alpha male Crag, standing at the edge of the clearing, staring at the kill with eyes that burned with hunger and rage. They had smelled the blood. They had come to claim what they saw as rightfully theirs, and they were not interested in sharing. Crag stood 6 inches taller than any member of Cato's clan, his body thick with muscle, earned from controlling the best territory, the best food sources, the best of everything. His face bore scars from 100 dominance fights, and his eyes held the cold certainty of someone who had never lost. The River Group fanned out in a semicircle, cutting off any escape route. They moved with practiced coordination. This wasn't their first time claiming another group's resources. Their strategy was simple and brutal. Intimidation, violence if necessary. Total submission required. Cato's clan members immediately began displaying submission behaviors, crouching low, avoiding eye contact, making soft appeasing sounds. This was protocol. This was survival. When a stronger group arrived, you surrendered everything and hoped they let you live. But Cato didn't crouch. His hands, still slick with impala blood, tightened around the sharp rock. They had killed this. They had risked everything, fought together, crossed an evolutionary threshold together, and now they were supposed to just hand it over? No, Cato said, not a word because words didn't exist yet, but a sound, a grunt that carried absolute refusal. His mother grabbed his arm, terror in her eyes. Grook made urgent gestures, submit, survive, live to scavenge another day. But Tok, his younger brother still bleeding from the impala's kicks, stood up beside Cato, then Mira, then, one by one, 5 others rose to their feet, rocks in their hands, forming a ragged line between the River Group and the kill, 7 against 23. Crag's face showed surprise, then amusement, then something darker. He vocalized loudly, a dominance display that should have sent Cato's group fleeing in panic. He charged forward 3 steps, arms raised, teeth bared, demonstrating his superior size and strength. But Cato didn't run. Instead, he threw his rock. The stone caught Crag directly in the chest, not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to shock. An audible gasp came from the River Group. You didn't throw rocks at the Alpha. You didn't resist. This was violation of every social rule their species understood. Crag's face twisted with rage, and he rushed forward, intending to beat Cato into submission, to remind everyone of the natural order. But before he could reach Cato, 6 more rocks flew through the air. Most missed, but 2 struck Crag's shoulders and 1 hit his face, splitting his lip. The River Group's Alpha stopped, confusion replacing rage. This was impossible. The weak didn't fight back. The starving didn't defend resources against the strong. What Crag didn't understand, what nobody could understand yet, was that everything had changed. Cato's clan had crossed a line. They had hunted. They had killed. They had tasted what it meant to create their own food rather than beg for scraps, and that taste had transformed them at a fundamental level. They were no longer the same species they'd been that morning. Evolution doesn't just happen in bodies, it happens in minds. Craig snarled and signaled his group forward. The river group advanced as one, and Kato knew this was it. They would be beaten, possibly killed, and the impala would be taken. But at least they would die having tried. At least they would die having proven they could hunt. Then the earth trembled. At first Kato thought it was his own fear, his body shaking with adrenaline. But the trembling grew stronger, accompanied by a sound like distant thunder. Both groups froze, their conflict forgotten, as the sound grew louder, closer. A herd. Not just any herd, wildebeest, thousands of them, stampeding across the savannah in their seasonal migration. The ground shook with their passing, dust rising in clouds that turned the afternoon sun orange, and they were heading directly toward both clans. Crag's eyes went wide. He vocalized sharply, a retreat signal, and the river group scattered, running for the safety of scattered rocks and trees. Kato's clan should have run too, should have abandoned the kill and sought shelter. But Kato saw something else. The wildebeest weren't running randomly. They were being chased. Behind the herd, barely visible through the dust, were shapes. Large shapes, a pride of lions, working together to drive the herd toward a killing zone. The lions were doing exactly what Kato's clan had just done, hunting cooperatively. And in that moment, Kato understood something profound. They weren't the first to think of this. They were just the first of their kind. The stampede was seconds away. Mira screamed for everyone to run, but Kato grabbed the impala's leg and pulled, trying to drag the carcass to safety. Tok joined him, then Nala, all of them pulling together. But the impala was too heavy, and the wildebeest were too close, and Kato realized with crystalline clarity that he had a choice. Abandon the kill and live, or hold on to their prize and die. His hands tightened on the bloody leg, and he made his decision just as the first wildebeest crashed past, missing him by inches, and the world dissolved into dust, thunder, and the very real possibility that humanity's first hunt would also be its last. The world became chaos. Wildebeest bodies crashed past on all sides, their panicked bellows deafening, their hooves churning the earth into a storm of dust and debris. Kato couldn't see more than 5 feet in any direction, couldn't hear anything except the thunder of thousands of animals in full flight. A hoof struck his shoulder, spinning him around, nearly tearing the impala leg from his grip. He felt Tok's hand grab his arm, anchoring him, keeping him from being swept away in the living tide. Through the dust, he could see Nala and Mira still clutching the carcass, their faces masks of determination and terror. They should have let go. Every instinct screamed at them to release the dead weight and save themselves. But something deeper than instinct held them fast, something that had been born just minutes before when they'd made their first kill together. This was theirs. They had earned it with cooperation, with courage, with a leap of evolution that their brains could barely comprehend. And they would not surrender it. A gap appeared in the stampede, just seconds, just enough space, and Kato screamed wordlessly, pulling with everything he had. The clan pulled together, dragging the impala through the gap. Stumbling toward a cluster of rocks that offered minimal shelter, they almost made it. A massive wildebeest bull, separated from the herd and disoriented, charged directly at them. Gruk, still gripping the impala, looked up just in time to see 500 pounds of muscle and horn bearing down. The elder tried to move, but his aged reflexes were too slow. Kato released the impala and threw himself at Gruk, knocking the old male aside a fraction of a second before the wildebeest crashed through the space where he'd been standing. The bull's horn caught Kato's thigh, tearing flesh, and he went down hard, pain exploding through his leg. But hands were on him immediately. Tok, Mira, even his mother, pulling him toward the rocks, while other clan members grabbed the impala and hauled it to safety. They all collapsed in the shelter of the boulders, gasping, bleeding, but alive, and still holding their kill. The stampede passed, the thunder fading into the distance, leaving behind a landscape transformed by thousands of hooves. The dust began to settle, and through the clearing air Kato saw the lions, 7 of them working with deadly precision. They had used the stampede to isolate a young wildebeest from the herd, and now they moved as a single organism, 2 flanking, 2 driving, 3 waiting to cut off escape routes. The young wildebeest never had a chance. Within seconds it was down, the pride's coordinated effort making the kill look effortless. The lead lioness, scarred, magnificent, ancient, lifted her blood-stained muzzle and looked directly at Cato's clan. For a long moment, predator and emerging predator simply stared at each other across the transformed landscape. Then the lioness did something extraordinary. She vocalized, not a roar but a lower sound, almost like acknowledgement, and turned her back on Cato's group, focusing on her own kill. It was a message. Clear as any spoken language, you have your prey, I have mine. We are not so different now. Cato looked down at his bleeding thigh, then at his clan members, all injured, all exhausted, all still breathing. They had survived not just the hunt, not just the river group's challenge, but nature's most brutal test. And they had done it together. Grook, the elder Cato had saved, placed a weathered hand on Cato's shoulder and made a sound of gratitude, of respect. Then he turned to the impala and resumed working with the sharp rock, cutting into the hide with renewed purpose. But Cato wasn't watching Grook. He was looking back toward where the river group had fled. Through the settling dust, he could see Crag and his people emerging from their hiding places, staring at Cato's clan with an expression that wasn't quite anger anymore. It was something closer to fear, or respect, or both. Crag vocalized, not a challenge this time, but a question. His body language had changed. He wasn't displaying dominance anymore. He was asking permission to approach, permission to learn. And Cato realized the most profound truth yet. They hadn't just invented cooperative hunting. They had invented something that would define humanity for the next 3.9 million years. They had invented teaching. Cato looked at his clan, at the meat they'd earned, at the sharp rocks that had made the impossible possible. He looked at the lions in the distance, still feeding on their own kill. He looked at Crag and the river group, hungry and watching, waiting to see if this new world had room for more than just one clan of hunters. Then Cato did something that would echo through every human society to come. He gestured for Crag to approach, and he showed the river group alpha his bloodied rock. And he made teaching motions, sharing motions, together motions. The river group came forward slowly, cautiously, and for the first time in history, two rival groups of hominids sat down together, not to fight over resources, but to share knowledge. As the sun began its 5 leopards materialized from the gathering darkness, like nightmares made flesh. The big male from earlier led them, 2 younger males and 2 females, all moving with the patient confidence of apex predators who knew their advantage. Night was falling, and night belonged to the cats. 35 hominids huddled around the 2 kills, Cato's impala and the wildebeest the river group had managed to scavenge during the chaos. 35 pairs of eyes that could barely see in darkness, facing 5 sets of eyes designed to hunt when the sun disappeared. Crag vocalized sharply, a command to his river group to form a defensive circle. But Cato saw the fatal flaw immediately. 2 separate circles, 2 separate groups would be picked apart. The leopards would isolate, divide, and slaughter them 1 circle at a time. Cato grabbed Crag's arm, a gesture that should have triggered violence, touching another group's alpha. But instead of attacking, Cato pulled the larger male toward his own clan, making urgent gathering motions with his hands. 1 circle, everyone. Together. Crag's eyes widened with understanding. For a heartbeat, pride warred with survival instinct on his scarred face. Then he nodded and vocalized to his group. The river group moved quickly, merging with Cato's clan, forming a single large circle with the kills in the center, and every able-bodied individual facing outward. Rocks gripped in trembling hands, the leopards circled, their movements synchronized, probing for weakness. The lead male feinted toward one side of the circle, and when several hominids turned to face him, a female attacked from the opposite direction. She was fast, blindingly fast, but Mira was faster. The young female threw her rock with perfect accuracy, striking the leopard's face mid-leap. The cat yowled and twisted away, landing short, blood dripping from her nose. The circle held, the leopards regrouped, their confidence shaken but not broken. They were learning, just as Cato's people were learning. This was a new kind of warfare, intelligence versus instinct, cooperation versus individual prowess. The lead male coughed, a leopard's roar, and all 5 cats charged simultaneously from different directions. It was coordinated, brilliant, the same tactic the lions had used on the wildebeest. Overwhelm the defense, create chaos, pick off the weak in the confusion, but something extraordinary happened. Without command, without planning, the circle transformed. Half the hominids threw their rocks at the charging leopards, while the other half held theirs ready. The air filled with projectiles, most missing, but enough connecting to disrupt the charge, to make the cats flinch, to break their coordination. One leopard made it through the barrage and crashed into the circle between Tok and an elder from the river group. Its jaws reached for Tok's throat, and for a horrible second, Cato saw his brother dying the same way his father had died. But the river group elder swung his rock like a club, bringing it down on the leopard's spine with enough force to make the predator scream and release Tok. Then Tok, blood streaming from claw marks on his shoulder, grabbed his own rock and struck the leopard's head. Then Cato was there, and Crag and 5 others, all of them raining blows on the creature until it broke away, limping, defeated. The other leopards saw their packmate retreat and hesitated. This wasn't how it was supposed to work. Prey didn't fight back like this. Prey didn't cooperate across group boundaries. Prey didn't use tools as weapons. The standoff lasted through the longest moments of Cato's life. 35 hominids breathing hard, bleeding, exhausted. 5 leopards circling, reassessing, calculating whether the meat was worth the cost. Then the sky spoke. A crack of thunder split the darkness, and rain began to fall. Not the gentle rain of the wet season, but a deluge, a wall of water that turned the world into liquid chaos. Lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the battlefield in stark white flashes. And in one of those flashes, Cato saw salvation. A dead acacia tree 50 feet away struck by lightning. Fire bloomed at its base, impossibly burning despite the rain, sheltered by an overhang of rock. Fire. The thing every animal feared. The thing that turned night into day. Cato didn't think. He ran. Tok saw and followed, then Mira, then others from both clans, understanding spreading like the fire itself. They grabbed burning branches from the tree, their hands blistering from the heat but not caring, and they ran back to the circle, holding the flames high. The leopards recoiled, their predator confidence shattered by this most primal fear. The lead male made one last attempt to charge, but Cato thrust his burning branch forward, and the cat's whiskers singed, and ancient instinct overrode hunting strategy. The leopards fled into the darkness, their coughs of frustration fading into the storm. The circle collapsed inward, everyone seeking the warmth of the flames, the protection of the light. Cato looked around at the faces illuminated by firelight. His clan and Crag